So I'm not a farmer. I'm not even a good gardener. There's other things I do well. So I admire farmers. I admire those who work in the earth and recognize the signs, because there's, one of the things about seasons and planting and harvesting is we only know time for it after it's done. So we play a guessing game as to when is the right time to do things. James, the author of this passage, is not a farmer either. He is another carpenter's son. He is James, the younger brother of Jesus, and the leader of the Jerusalem church following the resurrection of Jesus until he was murdered by political authorities in 62 A.D. But whether you're a farmer or not, that's where your food comes from. And so he uses that image. That image of the farmer was very honored and revered in the ancient world. Hesiod, an ancient Greek poet, said something that is obvious to us, but was not obvious to the people of that time. In his book called Works and Days, which is it's a long poem about looking for the signs, when you should plant, when you should harvest, when you should care for the animals in a particular way, he writes, work is not a disgrace. Not working is a disgrace. Now that sounds obvious to you and I. Work is not a disgrace. Not working is a disgrace. But in the ancient world, work was for other people to do. If you were a person of status, you would not sully your hands with work, because in your mind you would think this was bringing disgrace on you and your family. Indeed, we often hear about Thomas Jefferson, one of the founders of our country. And when I was a kid, and we went to I'm going to blank for a second. He had Monticello, as I remember. That's it. We went to Monticello and saw his farms and all of his planting and everything he grew and how scientific it was. Now when you go to Monticello, you learn. Actually, he didn't do any of it. Slaves did it. Now you can tour the slave quarters, or where we think they were. Work is not a disgrace. Not working is a disgrace. And the word is grace, like the word of what Jesus gives us for our salvation, except it's used in a negative sense. To not work is to not be open to receiving the grace of God. So, James writes, be patient, therefore, brothers and sisters, while we wait, or until the coming of the Lord. What should we be doing? This was the question 2,000 years ago, as people waited for the Messiah, for the Christ to be revealed. And it's a question for us now, as we wait for his return. Behold the farmer who waits for the fruits of the earth, who must be patient as he waits for the first rain and the later rain. Now, every area is different. In the Mediterranean climate, you had an early rain in October-ish, and you had a later rain in December-ish, and you had to plant around those planned rains. That's when they would come. Be patient. Stand fast in your heart until the coming of the Lord is near. And then it says, this is the important thing, while we work together, while we share the work, because salvation is not simply saying a few magic words and then racing to the sideline so we can stay unstained from the world. Keep me safe, Lord, behind this fence so I can keep the world and all of its suffering out of my life. He says, don't argue with each other And don't judge each other, because behold, the judge of the world is right outside the gate. You know, as we wait for Christmas, as we wait to get all of our tasks done in our decorating, as we wait to see what ministries God is granting to us, begging us to take hold of. As we watch the clock each Sunday, wondering if worship will ever end. As we get annoyed with our fellow church members because they're the ones we spend the most time with. Remember that we are called. The grace is working. The disgrace is being impatient or complaining about each other. Farmers know there's a lot to do. You don't just plant and say, whew, I'll see you in September. When I visit the oldest farmers in our congregation, they are anxious to get about the tasks that wait for them. As I visit the most active farmers, they are always busy. As I admire the gardens of our church members, they know that weeds don't wait until we feel like going out to see what's happening. And that to leave the tomatoes too long on the vines means they will achieve their ends of rotting and splitting and spilling the seeds all over the earth. Next time you're ready, as you wait for the coming of the Lord, to complain about somebody in the church, in a church, remember that as farmers of the faith, there's a lot that we could be doing that would be much more profitable. Because after all, the judge is at the door. Take as your example, receive as your example. And here James invents a word. The bad suffering and the patience of the prophets who spoke in the name of God. Behold, we must be patient. And then, so often people speak of the patience of Job, and we know he had it rough and that he wasn't patient. If we can't be patient, we should do what Job did, which was endure. Wait it out. Get past it. Because we need to remember that this is a funny word. It says, you have seen the end of the Lord, but what it really means is you know how this ends. You know what's going to happen. We see the Christ child every year, and we wait for Jesus to be revealed in glory. So remember that the Lord is full of compassion for us and merciful. There's the grace of God. The disgrace, having received salvation from the Lord, is to do no work at all. The grace is to be about the business of the gospel. Since we have to wait anyway, and we don't know how long we'll be waiting, and we don't know what circumstances will be, get in the game. There's always something for us to do. I said that James was the other carpenter's son, the brother of Jesus. And in his book, we see more echoes of the words of Jesus than in any other book except of the New Testament, except for the 4 Gospels. So I don't know what of this are actually words of Jesus that he's remembering, because in those days they didn't put quotation marks and footnotes, so we knew the source of what is being said. But they knew 2,000 years ago. They knew that in hearing James, the brother of Jesus, they were also hearing words that he remembered that Jesus had said. Grace and disgrace. We say that we have received the grace of the Lord Jesus Christ in our salvation. Show it. Instead of complaining about others, get in the game. Amen. I want to invite worship team to come up at this time and want to remind you that the reason there's some empty gaps here is we got folks getting all dressed up because this wasn't done for my benefit here this morning. So, though I kind of like the park bench. Anyway.